Grasping the balance between pure potential and manifested reality is simple in a vacuum. The real test occurs when the world unexpectedly attacks your peace, forcing theory into practice. When an aggressive force meets rigid resistance, the physics are absolute. A solid object slamming into another solid object shatters both. This generates heat, friction, and a cascade of fragments that didn't exist before the impact. This is the entropy trap. In a closed system, reacting to chaos with your own rigid force, a 1 colliding with a 1, exponentially increases the total disorder. You aren't resolving the stress, you are fueling it. The ultimate cost of this friction is the integrity of your own internal system. If defending your peace requires you to destroy that peace through reactivity, you have sacrificed the very thing you were trying to protect. This reactive glitch is a hardwired biological reflex driven by the brain's left hemisphere, specifically a neural network known as the left brain interpreter. In the 1970s, cognitive neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga identified this module during his split brain experiments. Gazzaniga found that the left hemisphere constantly scrambles to make sense of the world. The moment you encounter a sudden stressor, the interpreter invents a plausible, yet entirely fabricated narrative to justify your reaction, rapidly casting heroes and villains to give the noise a structure. This diagram shows how that narrative functions as a trap. A stressor hits, and the rogue storyteller drags your consciousness out of calm potential and locks it into this dualistic panic loop, a cyclical flow between a perceived threat and a victim narrative. Because of this neurobiology, a minor inconvenience like a spilled coffee or a rude email is instantly translated into an existential threat. We become prisoners of the story our brain is telling itself. We can find a blueprint for short-circuiting this loop in the 18th century Zen master Hakuin. When Hakuin was falsely accused of fathering a child, his only response to the public shaming and the loss of his reputation was 3 words. Is that so? He raised the child without complaint until the real father was revealed a year later. When the parents returned to beg for his forgiveness, he simply handed the baby back and said again, "Is that so?" Hakuin's response functions as an expression of sovereign neutrality. By refusing to validate the mob's framing, he keeps the external chaos from anchoring into his own internal system. He is utilizing the split-second window between an external stimulus and his biological urge to react. In that gap, he retains his agency, choosing to remain the unrendered 0 rather than becoming a reactive 1. This concept was later formalized by psychiatrist and existential philosopher Viktor Frankl. Having survived the concentration camps, Frankl observed that our ultimate freedom lies in that exact space, the ability to choose our response to our environment. Hakuin maintains absolute administrative control over his reality by staying in that gap. He refuses to let a captured external system capture his internal state. To apply this, we use a 3-step protocol. First, the 0-point pause. Observe the raw stressor before emotion attaches. Second, redirection. Act like a wetland, letting floodwater flow harmlessly instead of fighting it. Third, sovereign assertion. Set a boundary from unshakable balance without defensive friction. This is social Aikido, the neutralization of entropy through the redirection of psychological force. In a corporate environment, applying this to a toxic email maintains your homeostasis. A neutral, data-driven response starves the sender's ego loop of the reactive friction it requires to grow. In personal relationships, you can treat psychological projection like a misdelivered package. You don't have to get angry at the box. You simply refuse to sign for it and allow it to be returned to the sender. Even in a sudden catastrophe, like a flat tire, anchoring in the present mechanical reality blocks the interpreter's victim narrative. You focus entirely on the jack, the spare, and the task at hand. You cannot control the wind, the storm, or the traffic, but you retain absolute control over whether your sails tear or whether they catch the breeze. To download the Sovereign Protocol for Recursive Observation Blueprints, visit the vault at journey.czwx.xyz. So stay limber, abide, and keep wandering.